Hello everyone, and welcome back to my channel, Just Another Struggling Writer, the beleaguered author's one-stop shop for commiseration and hopefully inspiration. My name is Carrie Scher, and I am just another struggling writer. Today I will be doing my March cozy reset. I'm getting to this a little bit later than I'd usually like because I've actually been in Denver for the last 4 days. I was there with my daughter for her choir conference. It was a really fun experience, but I am definitely glad to be home and definitely in need of a reset. As usual, I'll be doing first a reflection on the month before, do a little bit of cleanup, and then look ahead to my goals and my content for the new month. So let's just go ahead and get started with my February reflections. If you watched my video from a few weeks ago, you already know that February didn't work out for me the way I had planned. At the beginning of the month, I started having these really intense, really prolonged migraines. I'm used to having migraines a couple of times a month, but these were coming every single day for almost 2 weeks straight. And it really affected my ability to not just read, because obviously when you have a migraine, it's hard to look at a book or even a Kindle or an audiobook with the sound sensitivity, but I also wasn't writing and I wasn't doing any content creation, obviously. I was actually, towards the end of that 2-week period, the only thing I had energy for was to just come home and get straight in bed. So that was like the first 2 weeks of my month, and then after that, my daughter got very seriously ill. She had influenza type B and strep throat at the same time, and then right after that, I found out that there was going to be a management change at my day job, and the boss that I've been working with pretty closely for the last 2 years is being shuffled to a new location, and I'm going to be now working with a man that I've met but never really worked with before. And with that came a lot of stress and a lot of uncertainty that kind of just killed the vibe. And all of that taken together meant that I didn't get hardly any reading done, about half of what I accomplished in January, and I didn't get any writing done. And that's not a joke. I got 0 writing done. Goose egg. Obviously, that's not something I want to do. I want writing to be a focus of mine, not something that falls to the back burner at the first sign of trouble. But the truth is even before the migraines and my daughter's illness, I was struggling a lot with writer's block. I was feeling really stuck on this one particular scene and feeling anxious about the scenes that were to come later. I'm getting into the middle part of the book, and that's something that I haven't really well defined in my head. I've got the beginning pretty solidly, obviously I've written it, and I know how it's going to end, but the middle, the components of the middle, I have a few ideas here and there, but I hadn't quite pieced them together. And so that anxiety and the writer's block was holding me up pretty badly. So when the migraines hit and when my daughters got sick, I just allowed writing to fall down the list of priorities. I also started becoming really enamored with this previous idea that I'd had. I had been writing this other idea, this portal fantasy, last year, but as I was getting closer to Nano, I thought that I would do this urban fantasy for Nano, because the idea was the urban fantasy is going to be shorter. I'm only projecting it to be 75,000 words. And if I could write and finish Nano, then 50,000 words of that 75 would already be complete. And then I could use December or January to go ahead and finish that. And then I would pick up the portal fantasy after. Well, here we are. It's March 4th and we haven't done that yet. So I'm starting to kind of feel the itch and the pull of that story idea that I abandoned to write something quote unquote easier. But at the same time, I know that if I never finish a manuscript, I'm never going to fucking finish a manuscript. I can't just stop and start on a whim, and I actually just have to buckle down and finish something for a change. And so that sense of responsibility and the impulse to write what is motivating me at the time were fighting each other, and that was also contributing to not wanting to write because I felt pulled between these two impulses. I'm proud to say that in the interim, I have given it some thought, and I am going to go ahead and finish the urban fantasy first. Above all else, I have to finish a manuscript, and no matter how much I am pulled by this other idea at the moment, I know that it would be in my best interest to focus on the one I'm currently in the middle of. So that's writing. Reading wise, like I said, I did about half of what I did in January, 5 books, not my best month, but I'm not going to beat myself up over it. Like, I literally couldn't read a book when I was laid up with migraines. I just couldn't. And then when I got better, I did try to finish as many as I could. That being said, despite not having read a whole lot, I did add a whole lot of books to my library. I posted a major book haul at the beginning of the month in which I added something like 19 books, and I have since added one more for a total of 20. And that final book I picked up was God Killer by Hannah Kaner. I originally picked this out from the library back in January, and I really, really enjoyed it. So I ended up pre-ordering the sequel, Sunbringer, that's coming out later this month. My only regret is that the hardcover of God Killer doesn't really seem to be available except for like an exorbitant price. So I ended up getting the paperback and the sequel to match. But what strikes me the most about this book is when you have it in your hands is that you appreciate even more just how short it is. Let's see, how long is it? Paperback version comes in at 288 pages. That is incredible for the amount of plot and world building and character work that actually went into this novel. Hannah Kaner puts on a masterclass in brevity in this book. And I really think that every writer, especially every writer of fantasy, needs to read it and absorb some of the lessons in being concise and being efficient with your words, as Hannah Kaner was in this book, because truthfully, this book does not waste a single sentence, a single word. Everything is done, is completely polished and knitted perfectly together to perfection to tell a story, an epic fantasy, in less than 300 pages. I tend to be a very thin writer myself. Especially in my first drafts, I'm just like, go plot, go, and like I leave descriptions by the wayside. I'm not saying that that's what she does here, but I appreciate how she was able to weave together this narrative without getting too overly concerned about what ultimately doesn't matter. Everything in this book ties directly back to the plot or the character development. And I could not be more excited for Sunbringer to come out later this month. So that brings my total books added up to 20. And with that high number, you would think that I might have some books to unhaul, but I don't. I didn't get rid of a single book this month. I did that big haul at the beginning of the month, and I haven't really been back to the bookstore since. I've gotten some book boxes in, but I haven't really had an opportunity to unhaul anything, nor have I found any books that I disliked enough to unhaul. That's fine. I know some people try to unhaul, at least once a month. Obviously, I still have some shelf space that I need to fill out, so unhauling isn't as much of a priority for me, so I'm not too concerned about it. All right, now let's talk about some of my favorites in February. My favorite book of February was Fevered Star by Rebecca Roanhorse, and let me tell you, this was a big surprise for me because when I finished Black Sun last year, I wasn't actually counting on reading the rest of the series. I was kind of disappointed, not in the ending itself, but in the setup and premise of what I imagined the setup and premise for the second book would be. I wasn't excited about some of the characters who seemed like they were going to have a larger role, and I just felt a little bit let down. So I ultimately did pick it up, and through 3/4 of this book, I thought it was pretty mid, and then the ending changed my mind completely. I'm going to give you my full thoughts on Fevered Star in my February wrap up, but let me tell you, I am so ready for Mirrored Heavens to come out in June. I have some vacation time that month, and rest assured that's what I'll be using it on. I don't have a favorite line this month because I didn't write anything. I wrote 100 words on the first day of February, and then I erased them the next day and then never got back to it. So nothing for my favorite line. My favorite video game that I played in the month of February is something called Darkest Dungeon. It is a Lovecraftian horror inspired roguelike where you take a bunch of fighters down into these demon infested pits and try to level them up so that they are eventually strong enough to tackle the darkest dungeon where the eldritch evil resides. I've never beaten it. I've played it a zillion times. I probably have something like 800 hours in it. Even though I've never finished it, there's something about the mechanics and the routine of it that just scratches an itch in my brain, and that itch came up pretty prominently in February. So that's what I spent some of my time on after the migraines abated. I got into that. I played that a lot. And a new category for this month, I have a favorite anime. I only watched 2 really this month. The first one was Dragon Ball Z, which my partner is actually doing a complete rewatch of, and I just was catching it. And honestly, I love Dragon Ball Z. It's one of my favorite TV shows of all time, and I could talk about it forever. I won't here, but my favorite that I was watching intentionally is Magic Knight Rayearth, which is a anime from I think like the 90s by Studio Clamp, who does Cardcaptor Sakura and a couple of others, and it's just super nostalgic for me. I was really into it when I was a teenager in the early 2000s, and it's about these 3 young girls who are magically transported to this secondary world where they are tasked with rescuing the pillar of the world, who basically keeps it protected from outside magical forces and these monsters that rise up in her absence. She has been kidnapped by this evil sorcerer, and so it is these girls' job to go and rescue her. And as they travel, they learn more about their powers that this world has bestowed upon them, and about each other, and of course about themselves. And then another new category that I'm adding for this month is my favorite song. And this month, my favorite song was Hoax by Taylor Swift. I've heard the song before, but something this month just clicked. I was thinking about it, and I just imagine, I can't help but think of like Wuthering Heights now when I hear it. Something about like standing on the cliffside and just the gloominess, married those 2 things together. And I've never actually been that much of a fan of Wuthering Heights, but that song just kind of made me appreciate it more. And so I listened to it a lot on repeat this month. So those are some of my favorites. It is now time to do a little bit of tidying up. Once again, my workspace over here is a bit of a mess. We've got this shelf over here by my window that has been treated as kind of a catch-all for a while, and I would just like to get that just kind of tidied up. I'm also going to bring you along as I add some books that I picked up in Denver and some books that came in book mail to my owned library and to my Mimic here. So I'll just kind of show you what my Excel spreadsheet that I use to keep track of everything, and my process for adding things or adding my numbers to my Mimic. All right, let's get started. Okay, and now it is time for our March look ahead, starting with, as always, my content calendar for the month of March. So here you can see I posted my March TBR on the 1st. Even though I was in Denver, I busted my ass to film and edit and get it scheduled before I left because I knew there was no chance of that happening while I was gone. Today, of course, is the Cozy Reset. Then on the 7th, I will be doing my February reading wrap up. On the 10th, I'm going to be doing my Denver reading vlog. I did get some reading done in Denver, not as much as I planned on. I wanted to read a book a day, and that didn't happen. But I still read close to like 750 pages while I was there. So still a pretty resounding success. On the 13th, I will be doing my first writing vlog of the month. And then on the 16th, I will be doing a Behind the Bandwagon book review of Leviathan Wakes. That is the first book in the Expanse series, which I read this month. Then on the 19th, I will be doing the book recommendation tag, which I found on YouTube. And then on the 22nd, I will be doing my second writing vlog of the month. And then on the 25th, I haven't really planned anything yet. I don't know what I'm going to do, so I'm kind of leaving that open and see if any ideas come to me. If not, I've got some videos that I didn't get to in February that I'll pull out of my pocket for that. And then on the 28th, I will have a cozy reading vlog. I haven't decided what book I will be doing for that yet, but that's the intention for that. And then on the 31st, I will be doing my April TBR, and that is the whole month. Okay, so that is my content creation schedule. Now let's talk about some of my goals for the month of March. And pretty much they mostly just boil down to read and write more. And I could probably make that my goal every single month, but I have more of a theme in mind for these goals, and that is to do these things, reading and writing and everything else, with more intention. And by that, I mean, don't treat these goals or these activities as like these throwaway hobbies that I can pick up and put down on a whim. I want to do all of these things with intention. So like when I say writing intentionally, I mean, make it a concrete habit, something that I have to do every day, just as surely as brushing my teeth and taking my daughter to school and going to work and making dinner. Writing every day is something that I have to do, something I have to get in the habit of if I want to be successful as a writer. And more to the point, when I'm sitting down and working on my manuscript, I'm immersed in my manuscript. I'm not just writing words just to write words. I'm focused on it. I'm writing a manuscript with an end goal in mind. I'm writing to finish it. I'm writing to have a plot and characters that I care about and that I hope one day other people will care about. And when I say writing intentionally, that's what I mean. Writing with an end game in mind. In the same vein, I also want to start planning my next manuscript. I do intend to go back to the portal fantasy once this urban fantasy is done, but this time I want to start over with a plan. It's been a long time since I've started a project with a full outline, and that is very unusual for me. I am a pretty strident planner. I normally don't start a project until I have a full outline, and for some reason these last year or two, I've just gotten away from that. And I think my productivity has really suffered because of it. So in my downtime, when I have time, again, not sacrificing my actual writing time, I would like to start the planning stages of this next manuscript. And that is world building and character creation and getting a full outline drawn up. So that way, when the urban fantasy is done and I've written the end, I've already got my next idea in place and ready to go for whenever I want to start that. And I don't have to worry about getting lost in the middle of a manuscript like I have been lately without an outline. As for reading goals, I would like to read double-digit books again. The high that I got in January from hitting that number was incredible and it felt amazing. And I did feel a little bit let down that I wasn't able to do that again in February. And I know I have got all these excuses, migraines, daughter sick, everything, but I still feel like I could have read more and just didn't. And so I want to get back to reading that much again. I've already got the 10 books I want to read this month planned out, including 2 I was supposed to read last month but didn't get to, and then a couple that I picked out from the library already. So I've got if I manage to hit all of that, it would be an incredible feat, but that is my goal. And that goes back to, again, reading with intention, reading with a goal in mind. I find that having a goal, especially when it comes to reading, really, really helps motivate me instead of just feeling like, oh, I'll just do it whenever. It just really helps keep me focused on meeting that goal. As you can tell, I'm pretty goal driven. I would also like to finish Magic Knight Rayearth. Like I said earlier, it's a pretty short series, so definitely doable. The only thing is that when I watch anime, I can't do anything else. And if you recall in my last reset video, that's intentional. I chose anime as a activity because I can't multitask, and it's just the idea is that it forces me to disengage from other stressors. But I have found that it's hard for me to not multitask. I am someone who thrives on being and staying busy and feeling accomplished and being productive and all of that. And like, it's just hard to completely detach from everything and watch something on TV without working on something on my computer or doing something else. So that's going to be something I'm, again, trying to be more intentional about, carving out time to just relax and do nothing else. It didn't work out so much for me this last month, again, with everything else, but being intentional about taking time off and not worrying about content or reading or writing or whatever. And then lastly, more of a kind of general goal is to just kind of be tidier. I am a person who is kind of cluttered by nature, and my partner is the same way. So we're kind of feeding that into each other. And we kind of sat down and talked a little bit this last weekend about changing that and helping each other change that. So just being a little bit more cognizant of the clutter as it builds up, putting things away immediately rather than just laying down and saying, I'll get to it later. And, you know, just general cleanliness. Again, being intentional about habits and behaviors. And I think that is everything. What a crazy month of February I had. And it looks like March is going to be pretty crazy in and of itself. At least I don't have a out-of-state trip to plan and worry about, but I've got my daughter's birthday and Easter and just some other things coming up that I do have to account for. But as always, that's just life, as everyone has it. Thank you so much for coming along on this cozy reset. I hope you enjoyed watching, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.